I'm the voice of Night Industry 2000's microprocessor, KITT for easy reference, KIT if you prefer.
Welcome back for this, the last part of my conversation with Tom Greene. We will get lots of more anecdotes on Knight Rider from him today, so I hope you enjoy.
Yeah.
Tom, just a quick question.
Sure.
Just comes to mind. In Dead of Night, footage from the pilot show where the plane is blowing up is reused. When is that decided? Well, the end scene, we're going to use a plane that blows up. Let's just use that from the pilot show.
That is exactly what it is. We do that all the time. We call it going to the morgue.
Yeah.
And you go into the morgue. There's a scene from Knight in Shining Armor, I think, where you see, is it David kind of sulking outside an estate and to go into the house? Or maybe it was maybe it's the burglar. Or the guy who kills him, kills the Indiana Jones character going there, and they use that in two other shows.
Okay.
Him going, use it to save time, whatever. I have, which I can't go into. I did that to the Ultimate, which is for a whole other, which is in my commentary actually in my other show, Tales of the Gold Monkey. But we will, go to the morgue, as they say, if you need something, and reuse it. And you have to be careful with that. And some shows do it to a point where you go crazy. One thing on sound, you get this, and Universal had this little group of sound things. And for years and years and years, and of course now it's completely outdated, there was one sound of a phone ringing. And for probably 1,000 TV shows and 500 movies, every time you heard a phone ringing, it would be this one sound. And there is, as you know, from Star Wars, people know that, and I've just forgotten the name of it, the something howl, the something yell, and it came originally from a low-budget Western of someone being shot off a horse. But everybody, Spielberg, Luke, everyone has used that.
But is it something that you do consciously when you write the manuscript, or is it when you finish the manuscript you just see, okay, this we can twist it just a bit, and then we can reuse some footage?
That's a good question. Most of the time, on some things where I wasn't using footage, but I would use stock footage.
Yeah.
But for example, in my Western, they kidnap, as I told you before, when I was up in the atrium, they kidnap this boy, and he's put to work in child labor in a mine. And it's an amazing scene what they used to do, where they would pour these big nuggets of coal, and these kids are on this like incline, and they're picking rocks away from the coal, so just the coal's in there. And there is a brilliant movie that I remember called The Molly Maguires, about children labor and mining in Ireland. And I had remembered a shot that was that shot, and we could never reproduce that. So in that case, you will write in there, shot, and you put in a stock, and then, you can actually buy that. And, to buy the stock rights is 1 trillion times less than shooting it. And there are times in shows where there's been a really great stunt, or a lot of times where you'll see that in like a Knight Rider, is establishing of Knight Rider just going down a road or on the freeway or in a country road or something. And you'll see over and over and over again the same thing. It really doesn't matter. Oh, especially at night. Because night is really hard to differentiate, and you don't remember night. And as a matter of fact, one of the first things I did about halfway through the second season when I was in there, they kept using these same 3 night shots over and over again. And I said, no, I said, let's get a second unit. Let's go. You guys go out and just shoot the crap out of, Kit driving around downtown LA at night, going in and out and going like that. One of the real quick thing about that, which you do, you have to get permit. But the other thing, if you ever notice why most of the time when you see night shots and they're driving, the streets are wet, even though there's never been anything. Do you know why that is?
Well,
visually it just looks better. It's more
Oh,
dramatic.
okay, yeah,
You
yeah,
get the reflections of the light
yeah,
on the.
yeah, of
It's
course.
silly because everyone does. And as a matter of fact, when we did that, you have to get a permit to wet the streets at night. And I said, yeah, and make sure that they go out and they get the fire department to open and wet the streets.
That's
And
nice.
you'll notice in those Night Rider things, they always have that look.
Yeah.
Um, and the other thing about Dead of Night that we were talking about before was that when I went to Disney and I did a miniseries and I sort of helped to start the career of the magnificent Meg Ryan. I'm very proud of that. And that was her like first series. Um, we actually, like in the old days, they actually screen tested people that they wanted for the part. In fact, there was someone at a high level at the network who had a mistress who wanted to be an actress, and she actually got a screen test. I think I could be wrong, but none of them were any good. And then suddenly I get a videotape from an agent in New York with this incredible girl just sitting on a stool in his office telling jokes. And she had done, I think, some soap opera and some commercials and things before that, but this was her big break. But she didn't really have any film that she thought would be good. In those days, you surely didn't show people soap opera stuff. And we were at Michael Eisner, the head of Disney's, his house, looking at these screen tests. And then we actually had to go into his bedroom because this thing was on 3/4 inch video, and his only recorder player for it was in his bedroom, and he had to put it in. We sat on his bed. He had a TV, and he had it in the closet. I'm thinking, this man is, the most powerful man in the world, and it was kind of sweet, kind of. Anyway, the reason I mention all that is that I said, and I had a character named Callie Oaks, and that's what that part was for. And they were really good. They really, in most cases, if I said I like her, I didn't, they would listen to me. They were like that. They were like that at Paramount, and I was at Paramount when they were there, and then when they moved over, and I give them credit for that. They didn't push them. They gave respect to the creator. Yeah. Anyway, and when I saw that after these really expensive, because it was a Western, so they actually they'd done screen tests where the people were in makeup and with horses and hay and this and that, like in the old days. I said, none of those work. I said, but I'll tell you who's my Callie Oaks is that girl who's in that awful little badly lit video from her agent's office. And they went, what? I said, yeah, that's her. There's just no way. And then I said to them, and I'm not taking credit that he did it because of me. I said, as a matter of fact, I said, I would recommend that you get like a 2 or 3 picture feature deal on her because she's going to be a big star. You could just tell. And now I don't know if it was because of me, but she did get a deal. And the irony, and the only reason I bring all this up was one of the very first things she did, and at Disney, was a remake of DOA.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah.
Of DOA, which is why I brought that up, which is funny. And then she also, I talked to them about a remake. I had nothing to do with any of her movies, but I said to them, the other movie you remake is the one with Raquel Welch called Fantastic Voyage, where they shrink into this little molecule and go into a guy's body to save. And I think it was called Inner Space. But anyway, so that was kind of fun on that. We were talking about, I don't know, I think we did mention Kit crashing through the garage, the warehouse door, correct?
Yeah.
So that was it.
Yeah. So,
the reason
any other comments regarding Gina Davis?
I do. I have something that I was going to mention about. I could talk about her now. But the other show that, and I'll end this with my favorite story of all about the remarkable Gina Davis. The other show that there were actually a fist fight on the set, and it was not because there was so much tension. It wasn't by the actors, wasn't the director, wasn't the producers. It was, I won't go into it. It wasn't Jack Gill. He would never do that, but it got that bad. Was an episode I did. Again, I wrote it with Janice Helmer called Speed Demons. Yeah. And that's where, and actually, because Kit has to go on the motorcycle track with them, if you remember, yeah. And Jack, they did really damage to Night. He was very smart. He brought extra Knight Rider cars with him because they went through a lot.
Yeah.
Because it was down in we call Indian Dunes, where you see tons and tons of movies are done there, and and they were able to build this track. But it drove us all crazy because they had done Dalton, as you know, as try as a spinoff, and that was
Yeah.
a terrible idea. And we weren't even aware, because what they said is they came to Janice and they said, we want to do a spinoff with motorcycles. Now I didn't, and I thought it was like a motorcycle gang, and I thought, oh, maybe it's ironically, as I mentioned earlier on, they had to pay George Romero money because he did a motorcycle show called Night Riders,
Yeah.
and they paid him off for that. And I'm thinking they want to do and I thought, what is this like? There was a wonderful Peter Fonda movie, Nancy Sinatra, called Wild Angels, about the Hells Angels, when I was a little kid watching that. And this is going to be about the Hells Angels, which was I don't know if it's still around, which is a motorcycle, gang here in LA. But so the problem with that show, and it drove us crazy, was that the network kept changing their mind and what was it going to be. And what it basically was, if you remember, was that someone sabotages and either kills or badly wounds someone on the track.
Yeah.
And now they got to find out, or if he's going to do it again, and to protect them, or who did it. If you remember, that was kind of it. But the idea is that these characters were going to be these real stunt heavy, guys that are kind of crazy and like extreme and whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But they kept changing it back and forth, and it's going to be this and it's going to be that. And different people were, fixing the track to do obstacle and stuff. And then when it was done, they'd say, oh, no, we're not doing that anymore. Now we're doing, what do you mean you're not doing it? And the thing that was so terrible about this, which then is in my also my favorite, as we get to the ends of all this, Edward Mulhare's story, the director of this was named Bruce Greene, no relation to me, one who I knew, which I won't go into, but I knew for years and years and years and years. He's older than me, little older, years and years at Universal, and I'm this punk kid, and he's older, and he's really pushing himself forward. He was working on a project, and the studio said, "Oh, we want you to have this young kid, Tom Greene, working on that with you." So we did not get along years before that, because he didn't. He thought, "Who is this crap kid, snotty nose kid?" We ended up becoming incredibly close friends. He's one of the best directors ever. I used him in a lot of other shows. But he hadn't done something. I think he did a Magnum, and then he hadn't done something for a while. And then we got him on to doing Night Riders. So this was kind of a comeback. And after this, by the way, the guy never stopped working. But you don't want to do this as a director. So he gets this, and he literally comes in the first day, and I'm there with someone from either the network, or it might have been, we had a supervising producer who didn't write, named Joel Rogerson. Yeah. And which we didn't work with much. And he actually was on Magnum with us for a while. And I knew him for years. And I hate to say it, I think I got into, and he was making changes, but I didn't realize the network. And here's poor Bruce Greene getting his new chance on a new show, on a new series. And he's there with his script, and he was unbelievably organized. He had everything plotted out for the next, and he'll continue to be that way. Yeah. And here I am, and I'm remembering this now, I think I was in Joel's office, and I was getting so angry, and I don't lose my temper. But we were getting jacked around on this so much, and Joel finally did something almost to the point where he says, it'd be like going to Spielberg and saying, does it have to be a shark? Can it be a bear? Can it be, a Manitou? Can it be something else? Seriously, because at one point Joel said, you know what? Does it have to be motorcycles? Can it be like, the bike thing they do in France, or, can it be a marathon? And I just, went crazy. And so I took my script. I'm embarrassed to say this, and not in front of him, but I think I picked it up, and they're sitting here, and I threw it against the wall. It was in a binder, threw it against the wall, and the pages went everywhere. And I, you got to remember, by now, this is near the end, we are dead tired, and we've been working, and I blew up, and Bruce is going, oh God, what did I get myself into? And it got worse and worse and worse on that show with the fights and this stuff, but it did get done, and we finally got that finished. And ironically, because it was we never ever figured out how this was a spin-off. No. Who are these characters? And then, of course, and what they really, in one point, they said to us, or I said, can you high tech, make them really high tech? So they have the helmets, but in the helmet, you can see, the whole, like a whole control panel,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, type of thing. And I said, okay, so they're working for like an organization as a kit in their helmet, and then no, we can't do that. It's too expensive. And that doesn't make sense because they're not within, or why would they have that in their helmet? Anyway, it was insane. And of course, later, maybe a year later, a series came out and they kept pushing this idea of what they wanted. They thought it'd be cheaper is to do Knight Rider on motorcycles.
Yeah.
Somehow they thought that's cheaper to do, and Kit would be in the screen, and they had all these effects for that they had done for Battlestar Galactica. So they had all of the effects to do that because they had their great helmets, if you remember. And then there was a show called Street Hawk that lasted literally like 13 episodes. And I think really, it's not their fault. It just was nothing. It just, you didn't have David, you didn't have Kit, you didn't have any, it just didn't work. Didn't know, and it didn't know what it was. It kept changing. The irony on that show, by the way, was so many of the guest stars of Knight Rider for some reason was on Street Hawk.
Yeah.
But that was what that was. And as a matter of fact, on Street Hawk, George Clooney was one of the people in one of his very first things that he did, and Turco, she was in it. And Christopher Lloyd also was in there, and a lot of other people, who went on, but didn't help the show at all. But the story, I've told the story before in another place, but I know you said I love to tell the story. Yeah. Was in Speed Demons, amongst everyone else, including one of the, not any, someone else on the show, a crew member, a high-level crew member, went berserk about something, was being asked to do it. I can't do this, it's too much, and and he was going to have you can have the whole camera union. It wasn't John, the DP, but he could have that side of the union just walk off the set. Yeah. So poor Bruce Greene is working with that. At one point, which you always want to do at the end, which is fun, Devin is always talking about all of his accomplishments. And so near the end, there's that scene where he goes, "Of course, I used to do motocross. I was a big, during the war, I used to play." And he actually gets on a motorcycle, and that was shot at the Beverly Garland, which I mentioned in another show, I think, another thing here. There was an actress named Beverly Garland, and she had a hotel right by Universal but it was really neat. It had all these flags of all the countries in the front of it. It was kind of fancy, and so we used it a lot. And that's where we shot the scene. And he's supposed to get on them, and he didn't realize that he has to get on the motorcycle, put on, and you have to see that I think even though he puts on that it's him, that makes it funny. You don't quite do and drives off, or zooms off. And Edward, we didn't realize, was absolutely 100% terrified of motorcycles. He may have been in an accident when he was younger, I think sitting behind in a motorcycle, but I absolutely refuse to become a clown and get on this motorcycle. You get some absolute. And Bruce Siegel, no, we can't. Jack can do that. So he says, no. We have to see you for the joke. I mean, for the fun of it. That Devin gets on a motorcycle, and to our surprise, and then zooms off in the motorcycle. Yeah. And if we don't see your face, they just say, so what? You had, an extra. You had a stuntman do it. He says, figure it out. I'm through. I had it. And he literally, for the only and first time, went, up into, the dressing rooms are there. Went to, these trailers, went into his dressing room and slammed the door. And Bruce, poor Bruce, and now what's he going to do? You can't get someone else. You can't rewrite it. You need the scene. You're all building up to this, You rode motorcycles. And if he doesn't get it and we go over to another day, because it's, of course, later in the day, now that's the bane of a director. Oh, he was behind schedule. It costs more. You always hear that in features, but in television, you can't. It's like being not like missing a deadline.
Yeah.
You do not want to, so you don't want to go into meal penalty or golden time or any of these things. And Bruce didn't know what he was going to do. And a couple of other people had went in to talk to Devin, and you could hear, and they'd come out and go like that. So Bruce came over to me, and I knew, and I felt, and he had been through hell on this, and he goes, anything, Tom, anything. He says, you're such a good time, he likes you. I know Devin likes you. I said, all right, I'll try. So I knocked on the door. Yes, it's Tom. Come on. Yeah, come on. I go in, closes the door, and he's sitting there brooding. The thing about him I liked, which was good, he wasn't a drinker or anything. So, if you get that in that kind of anger, then you forget it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them do that. They get, but they say in their cuffs, as they say. But he's just sitting there brooding. And I said, listen, I feel terrible. I wrote that. That's my thing. And I'm not blaming you. And just, I have to have some dignity. I have to have a point in which I say, no, such as it. No. And I said, Edward, you're right. Look, absolutely right. And I want you to know something. As you know, we talked about it. I was a kid actor and, not big fancy things. One thing I did, I worked for a circuit that would go do shows, on what we call a bus and truck in little towns, in the Midwest and whatever for a week or whatever. And I got to, in the summer, be the kid, and the music man and be the little kid or whatever. And loved it, and I saw you, as you know, one of the things that you did, which you're famous for, is Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady. Yeah. And I got to say, screw Rex Harrison. Down, and in fact, you were so much more brilliant in these little, because you're in these little theaters, bad acoustics, water driven, but you were magnificent. You held those audiences captive. You had a whole nother take on him, and he's great. He goes, well. And I said, and now what are you doing? You're in this silly show. You are this massive talent. I mean, you're up there with, Olivier and Richard Burton and, Oliver Reeve and all these people. You're this great English actor. You did Shakespeare. Yes, I did. Of course. With these people, I said, and now what do? You sit behind a desk and you spew, yes, maybe there is a prince in Alaska, and her daughter has been kidnapped by the Zauzans, and we need you now to immediately go before the bomb drops on. I said, it's crap, and then you disappear, and at the end, well done, Mikey. Or April saying, I don't know, I hope he does well. This is crap. I'm writing this crap for you, and it's no good. You need to be doing something else. So here's what I'm going to do for you. I'm going to go right now up to the tower. Now, the tower, with Big Black Tower, that's where all the executives are. It's still there. So I'm going to go up to the tower right now, and I could be there in 10 minutes. I'm going to call Dick Lindheim and George Santoro, and I mentioned, I think, all the, and business affairs, and I think legal was Herb Stern. I said, I'm going to have a meeting right now. I say, this is urgent. I know they're up there, and I'm going to say, what we need to do right now for you, Edward, is release you from this contract. You need to be going back to do what you do well. You need to be back on that bus and truck, doing Henry Higgins, doing the Music Man, doing Fumed Oak, doing some great English, Long Day's Journey into Night. All these great, things that you were magnificent in. The Man Who Came to Dinner, I saw you, and you were brilliant. I said, no. So what? You were making what, 500 a week there, but you loved what you were doing. This was magnificent. This was you and your art, and you were happy. Now you come in for 2 days. They grab you. What? You make your 50,000 an episode. I said, but money is crap. It doesn't mean anything, because look at you. Look at you now. You're being made like a clown. They put monkeys on motorcycles to make people laugh and go, no. So I'm, what are you saying? I said, I'm going right now to the tower. I'm going to get your agent on the phone. He'll be on a speakerphone and your manager, and we're going to release you from this nightmare that you're in right now and get you back to doing those, bus and truck. I said, I saw, I don't know what some English actor was doing. I saw him on TV doing a reverse mortgage commercial. Or it may have to do with, insurance for automobiles or something. You can be doing that too. And so I get up and goes, well, I mean, you can talk. I said, no. You're not going to go out there. You're not going to sit on that motorcycle. I'm not going to let it happen. And I start to walk, and he gets up and goes, wait, what are you saying? I said, sit down, we'll take care of it. And he gets up and he gets to the door as I'm going down his steps. He goes, don't have no decency, for the goddamn sake. Stop right now. And so I stopped. And I look and say, yes. Now give it. And he goes in, and like 3 minutes later, he comes out and he has his motorcycle helmet on. Let's get through with this. Let's go. He comes down. And Bruce looks at me like, what? And he sits on the thing. Now, if you watch that clip, you will see the most terrified, uncomfortable human being you've ever seen in your life. But what I also realized, he was still, feeling the horror and the panic of thinking that he was going to lose his job and be back doing bus and truck. That was part of it, and you'll see that in the clip. It was really quite wonderful.
That's brilliant.
And stupidly, David, when he came in, and they got on so well. But David, of course, being the practical joker, he did it. And he goes over and he goes, "Oh, that's great. By the way, you have to pop a wheelie now." Where he goes, what? And I just, David, please. And Jack quickly came over and said, no. He says, no. I'm going to do that part. And in the thing, if I'm not mistaken, the way we cut it, he goes off, and then I think he actually does pop a wheelie as he goes off. I don't know if he actually used it.
Yeah.
But
okay, let's see Devon pop that wheelie.
These races have sparked my interest in fresh air once again. Well, I'll see you later at the foundation.
But that was Jack, of course, doing the popping of the wheelie. But that was my absolutely favorite Edward story, and he was such a I loved him because I'd seen they had done him, actually, ironically, Rex Harrison did a movie called The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, and then they did a TV series with Hope Lang, and he played the ghost in The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, the TV series. And one of my all-time favorite movies was Our Man Flint, and he was the bad guy in Our Man Flint and a lot of other stuff. And I've just always had a thing. Also, when I did Thunder in Paradise, one of my other huge heroes was Patrick Macnee from the original Avengers with the bowler hat, and Mrs. Peel, and all that. And he was in that, and I got to direct and we got to go off at night with his group, and he would tell stories because he was in that whole group. So that's one of the great advantages, is being able to work with these people. But I love that story. I'm so proud of that. And there's a coda to that, by the way. I found out that he used to love to go to the Smokehouse, which is this old style restaurant. It was across from Warner Brothers, actually. And actually, it was Leonard Nimoy's favorite place too. And he wasn't a big drinker, but he would like to go there and hold court with a lot of the people. He would have one little drink or two, but he loved their food there. It was very kind of like English pub food.
Yeah.
But anyway, I heard that when that aired, and his people around, they said, "Edward, wow, I didn't know you can ride." And he said, "And that was you?" And he says, "Yes, and I popped that wheelie." God love him. Yes, and I popped that wheelie. And that's an American expression, which makes it even funnier. He had heard Jack say that, but yes. Yes, you can say.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, it goes on and on with all of these, but before I leave, I have one last story I want to share with you guys, and I'm really, really proud of. Um, when we were doing the shows, as you know, we were having problems with getting actresses, not only that were good, but Dave is like, again, 6'6", and a lot of except for Ann Turkel, they weren't. And so it was very hard for the directors and the DP and that, because the girls in these shows would come up to his waist and or his kneecaps, and I kept saying, we've got to get tall girls to be in this. And when actually Janice Hiller had written Kit the Cat, that was a very meaty character. It was a very meaty part. And I said, no, 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 no. We got to really get someone special who also is charismatic and tall, I said, and as tall as David or near as tall. And of course, the casting director said, where are we going to get? They don't exist. There aren't these tall. I said, yes. I said, listen, we're not writing Chekhov and Shakespeare, and we're not looking for Meryl Streep. We don't need Meryl Streep. We just need someone tall who's attractive. And I said, and I just came back from New York, and everyone knew this, but at that time, really tall girls, models were in vogue. It was a big thing. And I said, there's thousands of very pretty girls, models in New York. I said, go, and, and they all want to be actresses. I said, send me, go to the agencies there and, send me some pictures that you like, that you think are good, like 20, 30 pictures of girls, and they've got to be at least 6'2", 6'1", 6'2". And, she's a professional. And of course, that was all phone. And within a day, I had messenger to me all of these, 8x10s. And I'm going through them and I see one that just knocked my socks off. I had never seen such a beautiful, gorgeous, but also smart and great eyes and sexy and friendly. She looked like the girl that literally the girl next to the one you don't want to date, you just want to marry.
Yeah.
And her name was Gina Davis. And she had never done anything before. Well, before she knew it, literally like 2 days later, something, no audition, it was like, this is the one. She was on and we were shooting the first scene. She got the part, of course. We're shooting the first scene, and in those days, Universal, as I said, would keep using old equipment over and over again. We had the old 35 millimeter, like you see in old movies, 35 millimeter cameras would have these big blimps on them.
Yeah.
And you see that in all these movies. And at that time, Panavision and Panaflex, they had much, much smaller, cameras. And they weren't allowed. I think even Spielberg maybe broke it when he did Sugarland Express or something, where he finally said, fine. He may have even said, I'll pay for them or whatever. He says, I'm not using these big cameras, because that was a whole thing was a chase, on the road, like Doodle. Maybe even did it for Doodle. But anyway, the reason I mention that is there she is sitting, and we used a practical apartment in North Hollywood, right by Universal. It was about 105. It was in the summer. And so you're in this little apartment with this giant camera and all these lights and very little ventilation. And she's sitting there and, tired and all this going on. She's never done this before. And it was, kind of a nightmare. Now, the director of that is an English director named Geoffrey Hayden. And his wife actually is a very famous actress, Eva Marie Saint. And Geoffrey sadly isn't with us anymore, but they had one of these magnificent, 30-year-old, 40-year-old marriages, and wonderful. In fact, her daughter, God, was it? I think Rebecca Hayden or whatever. But she became like the head of one of the development, and she was one of these people that, which is very rare, who was brilliant, who knew story, knew things, and all that. Point about Geoffrey Hayden is he was also one of the nicest people you'd ever meet in your life. He had a big heart. He's a good director. Never got angry, really cared about people. You see why Eva Marie Saint was married to him for so long. He's just a very genuinely beautiful man. The reason I say that was I was surprised because at lunchtime he comes into my office, and he had done other shows of mine. I've known Geoffrey, and you use Geoffrey. There's three great directors. There was Bruce Green. There's a brilliant director who also did Knight Rider, named Harvey Laidman, who was, I think, the best director ever lived in television, and Geoffrey Hayden. Anyway, he comes into my office and he looks terrible. And usually his sets are filled with frivolity and laughing and fun. I goes, what is it? He goes, I hate to say this, Tom, but I think you're going to have to, what we can do is we get back from lunch, let's do some other scenes, because it's easy. We have other standing sets. You're going to have to replace that actress, I think. I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, this is her first thing. She's not very experienced. She's a lovely person. She means well, but I don't think she's going to get through this. This is a pretty big part. And she's really doesn't seem to have it. And we're just going to go over schedule. Everything's going to be bad. And, it's your job. I think you're going to have to talk to her. And I think we can recast. And I went, whoa. I said, Jeffrey, he says, I hate this. You know me. I don't want to do this. I said, Jeffrey, listen to me. I was there early. I saw what she looks like. I'm blown away with her. And I'll say, not only are we going to keep her, but I hope that you're in the audience 5 years from now when she wins an Academy Award, which is really funny. Because, of course, 5 years later, she won an Academy Award. And so now he said, all right, well, he says, I'll tell you what. After lunch, we're going to be doing her close-up. We're going to do what we call an over-the-shoulder shot. And you do your master with everyone. Over the shoulder, as you see, it's on her, camera's on her, and David is in front of the camera, and you just see the back of his shoulder as he talks to her, and then you do the reverse of that. So he said, and that will really show us if we can do it. And that gave me an idea. So I went to David at lunch, and David liked her. He said, "What?" And he liked her too because I could look right in her eyes. She's 6'2". And I said, David, we got to come up with something. And so what happened was we did come up with something. And at the end of the day, Jeffrey Hayden came to me and said, I don't know what it is. She's brilliant. She's perfect. She did all her close-ups great. She's going to be fine. Thank you. And I'm so glad. Thank you so much. I said, yeah, I told you. Well, what we did, which I never talked about, in fact, last time I saw David Hasselhoff, we talked about this, and he, oh, yes, I remember that. He loves the story, was because it was over the shoulder shot and David's back is to camera, we quickly typed up and then got the lines that they have. Came out to 2 pages, and we put it in larger, a little bit larger font, as they say. And when we went in there, when no one was looking, he took the 2 pages and he taped them to his chest, so that when she was talking, now she hardly looked at them, but it's like Dumbo and the feather so you can fly. It gave her confidence. Here are the lines, and if I have to, I can just look down, and see the lines, which she didn't do. And that's what got her through the whole thing, was taping those on. And as a matter of fact, at the end of the show, I received, I don't know. Well, of course she knew because she saw that we taped these. She wrote me just a lovely thank you letter, which I wish I still had, about, because she realized what had happened. But, it's there's lots of other stories like that, but it's moments like that. And I've had the great joy with her, with Meg Ryan, Kim Basinger, with her first project stuff, with people that come in and, and I'm not saying, I discovered it, but you feel you may have had, something to do with giving them that spark. Because the last thing is this is such a insane business, and none of it is based on, if you're a painter, so you paint and you have a painting, or, you build a house, you can do that. Or if you're a cook, you can cook. Our business is all frivolous. It's all winning the lottery or not winning the lottery. And I always say to people in this business, never attach your sense of happiness and success or depression and failure on anything that happens in this business, because nothing has anything personally to do with you. It's all happenstance, So anyway, but that's, and as I've said before, I talk a lot about the show, and I could talk about tons of other shows, but it was a real family, a great crew, and David, and it was fun. And most important, I have to say, and thanks to people like you, after all these hundreds of years since we did it, the fact that these shows are, that there's a group of people who really, really love the show. And it makes us really proud, because we didn't know that, but we were trying to raise the bar a little bit and to have fun, but not to talk down to people, and to do stuff that you just, if you have a hard day, you're going to come home and you're going to enjoy it without feeling you're talked down to. you know, and everyone gets credit. I mean, everyone did, you know, great job. Great music, by the way. You know, I always love,
Yeah, yeah.
you know, and you know, to this day, one of the last thing I would say is I just found this out 2 days ago. You know, on the iPhone, you can get ringtones, and they cost like from Apple,
Yeah.
and they cost like $1.99. One of the top ringtones, still of all time, is dun 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 dun. It's the Knight Rider
Thanks to
theme.
Stu Phillips and Glenn Larson for doing that.
Yes.
So, yeah, and Tom, thanks for doing this. The man who kept Edward Mulhare on the show as Devon Miles. I think all Knight Rider fans around the world owe you big time for that effort. So,
Yeah.
so thanks so much for taking time to give us all these great stories. In some respect, Tom, I don't think we're fully finished, but we are for today. So thanks a lot.
My pleasure. I mentioned this to you before because, as you can, it's not easy to shut me up. But if I have the time, you know, I can't promise that I could maybe do this. If some people that watch this have other questions,
Exactly. That's
let them
actually
get in touch with you,
yeah.
and maybe at some point, which you see all the time, I'll do a Q&A and say, you know, Garth Lover from, you know, Liverpool, someone has this question, and you know,
Exactly.
and I would love to answer that. I've done that in convention stuff. It's fun. I like it too because what this does, like this did, is it brings our cobweb brains. It brings back memories
Yeah.
that have kind of been put away into a little storage
Yeah.
shed,
Yeah.
and now you could relive. You know, I mean, every
Exactly.
time telling the Devon story, suddenly being back in that you know hot trailer with him, you know, trying to get him to, and you know that was and it was so I was having such a good time,
Yeah.
so I can relive those things. So thank you all, and thank you. This was great.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, that was it. All good things have to come to an end. Also, this long conversation with Tom Greene, and I want to thank Tom for taking the time. He spent a lot of time doing this, and thanks so much for revealing all your memories and stories regarding Knight Rider. I hope you've all enjoyed it. Take care.